another, we're being live streamed, so just to alert you to that. Welcome to the Finance Resources and Corporate Committee, January the 6th, if only it was June. And Happy New Year to everyone. So firstly, our apologies are from Sir Roger and
also Councillor Jeffrey, for whom Councillor Morley is here today.
Great stuff. So Denise, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Morley, for stepping in. So that's apologies, thank you. Declarations of interest. Anyone like to declare interest on any items on the agenda? No. The exclusion of press and public, well, that's on Zoom, we'll just be turning them off, but I don't think there's any items that will need exclusions. And the minutes, are we all happy with the minutes from the last meeting, December the 1st? Yeah, good. Okie doke. So let's go to the main event then, Melanie. Item 5, capital spending and project approvals. So we will need approvals from this committee for the next stage of these projects. So I'd like your opinions on what Melanie's going to be talking about, so we can have a good discussion. Thank you, Melanie. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we've got 4 projects for consideration today. The first one is the bus franchising needs assessment. So the intention here is that we will do the analysis that needs to be done to establish whether or not to go down the franchising route or whether to stay with an enhanced partnership. So we'll be looking at the options associated with that. And the Combined Authority last summer did approve the initial indicative £1 million to start this off. So at this stage, we are hoping to draw down that £1 million formally, but we will also need further funding to provide the evidence base upon which we can then make a fully informed decision and look at a full business case on how we would bring buses back into public control. So we would like to recommend that we proceed through decision point 2, which is strategic outline case, and start to work on the full business case, recognising that the indicative cost of the full needs assessment could be up to 7 million. And what we'd like to request today is the release of that first £1 million to work on this. It is a high figure. We've been working very closely with MCA officers, in other MCA areas where they're a bit further on this journey, if you like. So Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, we've had conversations with them, and the latest estimates for the amount of work that needs to be done is between 4 and 7 million. Obviously, we'll try and keep those costs to an absolute minimum, but we will require external consultant support. We will then be building up skills within our organisation, and we need to get a handle on, what the implications are for each of the options and have a detailed look at the needs assessment.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you also for the clarity on the assurance framework that is in the papers. I think it was slightly it's something I raised with Melanie prior to this meeting, that the gap between 4 and 7 seems quite wide, and that obviously what we're hoping is that we're nearer the 4 rather than the 7. The 1 million has been already pre-agreed anyway at the CA in order to embark on this work. It's really important that we understand what our options are, and I'm really hoping that our teams can get best practice and learnings from GMCA in particular, because they've had challenges, legal challenges too, which is something we absolutely want to avoid. So I wonder, have we got thoughts on this particular item? We're all happy to approve the 1 million and then the envelope going forward. Mark?
Just a check, which I'm sure is on here, but the evidence base will also consider all of the options from a climate emergency perspective as well, and that will be part of the recommendations, I assume.
Yes, definitely. That will be part of the assessment, yeah.
Thank you.
There is a little bit of a lag though, Mark, and it is something that I've raised between the understanding on carbon within our team, and we have consultants who are supporting us with that, so that when a project needs that final approvals and outcomes, we need to be across that understanding. I don't know, Melanie, if you want to say a few words on that.
Yeah, I mean, currently we have consultants working with us on a carbon toolkit, and we are applying that to a number of pilot schemes with the intention of rolling that out wider. But there have been some clarification areas, and what we want to do is establish a consistent approach. So we're still working that through. The intention is that there will be training rolled out by the consultants as part of this commission. And I think the plan is to do a little video teaching module so that it will help all project managers and sponsors that are working on these schemes and people that are submitting and appraising the business cases on those schemes.
And also, I'd suggest as well that we use learning again from our colleagues across the region, that how do they do it? And there may be things that we can learn from them.
Yeah, definitely.
Great stuff. Okie doke. Everyone happy? Super. Moving on, Melanie.
Okay, so the second scheme is York Castle Gateway, and this is a scheme that's funded through the West Yorkshire plus York Transport Fund. And the focus of the scheme, or the scope, if you like, has concentrated now on the transport elements. This is part of a wider York Castle Gateway master plan, with a proposal to regenerate that area of York city centre. And what we've asked is if we can focus on the phases that particularly bring about the transport elements, the transport infrastructure and those benefits. We've now focused that, and it has resulted in just looking at 2 phases rather than the original 3 that were planned. And also the cost requirement of us has come down as well accordingly. So basically the works will include a new river crossing over the Foss that involves that it will come into a new public park on the riverside, and it will include new pedestrian and cycle facilities across that bridge, which will be a new route into the city centre, providing better access to employment opportunities, housing opportunities. And also the second element is it includes the area around Clifford's Tower, and to make improvements with cycle and pedestrian access so that it's making it easier for people to travel into and across the city centre to those jobs and housing opportunities. The amount that's required from the combined authority has reduced from the previous indicative approval of just over 8 million to now 4.6 million. But it will unlock a development site which is expected to provide 106 apartments and 1,458 square metres of commercial space. And income from the development is being used to part fund the wider master plan. And there'll be benefits in terms of active travel and health benefits by looking at walking and cycling across that part of the city centre. So it's recommended that we move forward for approval with that one.
And just to confirm, Melanie, this is at no additional cost out of our budgets. Obviously, it's a sort of historic relationship, but there is nothing where we should be concerned that York is taking necessarily away from other projects that we might want to deliver in West Yorkshire.
Yeah, I mean, we have a separate agreement with York, so they're a partner of the Transport Fund, and they pay a contribution into the fund, and they then have a limit up to which they can claim grant. And if they take less grant on this scheme, it may be that we need to look at an increased amount of grant on another scheme so that York can then put some of their resources that we're going to be match funding into elements of this scheme. So we will work with officers to work that through, but the cap will remain in total for the York partnership and the York schemes. So that will stay in place, but there's actually going to be less allocated to this project.
And just for my own interest, are any of the 106 apartments affordable? York is really expensive.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can come back to you on that one there.
Yeah, it would be good to know that across Yorkshire, we have that in our sites. Thank you. Everybody happy? Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And Armley Gyratory.
Yeah, so this is the third one, and this is part of the Leeds City Centre transport package with a number of elements in that. And ultimately, the aim is to close Leeds City Square to through traffic. So rather than have traffic going through the city centre that isn't going into the city centre, it's literally just travelling through. The intention is to route that traffic either side of the city centre and reduce the volume of traffic going through that city centre unnecessarily. So the works at Armley Gyratory are really critical to improving the capacity at that junction to then allow traffic to be routed away from the city centre. So pretty critical in terms of the strategic fit and the direction of travel in terms of that. There are also air quality issues at Neville Street, which will then be tackled by moving the traffic through a different route. Now, initially, there will be an increase in carbon in the locality at Armley Gyratory. But as we see more of a mix of electric vehicles coming into the fleet, that will decline, and there will be benefits in terms of better accessibility for those communities to the city centre. And there'll be improvements to footbridges, cycle bridges, and better access for active travel to those local communities as well. So we're proposing that 41 million is approved for the works at the Gyratory. The plan is that works would start on site this month, complete by the end of the year on the highways works, and then the footbridge and the cycle improvements would then continue into next year. But I think it's a priority at the moment to move the traffic before the City of Culture, the year of culture starts in 2023, and those celebrations. So that is certainly the intention, and it's recommended that we approve this so that they can move into delivery.
Obviously, it's really important they get going straight away, because are we convinced that you can get the square closed off for 2023?
Yeah, I mean, the current estimates are 12-month build programme for Armley Gyratory highways works. If there is a little bit of slippage, I think if the majority of the junction is complete, that plans could move ahead for the closure of City Square. The footpath and the cycle work will definitely run into next year, and it will be done later. So we're already aware of that scheduling. But yes, it should be able to deliver within the 12-month period.
Could we look into what the mitigations are for those 6 houses, and also the emphasis on with the looking into greening, bringing greening options in the subway, the tunnel, the green wall, and so on? If they could be, how much extra would it cost for them to be actually implicit, rather than just saying it's something we'll look into?
Well, at the moment, the scope of works does include the green wall, and if there is any replanting, the ratio of planting will be 3:1. So that is already committed in the scope of the project, but we will explore whether we can get additional green benefits, and we can certainly look at that. But as a minimum, the green wall and the planting at 3:1 is already a commitment, and it's in the scope.
Could you have a look at the language in the papers, Melanie? Because it doesn't seem like that's confirmed. It says we will look into it and investigate it. So if you could just confirm that that's absolutely going to go ahead, because obviously that air quality in an area of deprivation is something that's really important for us when we're talking about EDI, etc. James, and then Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, the green wall and the planting is definitely in the scheme. I don't want any confusion around that. And I think on the air quality point, we've spent over the last 5 or 6 years we've spent nearly £100 million on trying to improve air quality in Leeds through the air quality clean air zone work that we've done. So that has been a priority for us, and that really has improved the vehicle fleet. I think it's also worth again saying that I know there's a number of other schemes listed in the paper. I mean, this is in the wider context of things like the Sturton Park and Ride site, the Elland Road Park and Ride site, investment in new Pudsey Station car park. These are all schemes that are intended to try and give people options other than driving through that part of Leeds. And it is there is that wider context of schemes that we've delivered is simply to try and reduce overall the amount of traffic coming through Leeds city centre and the surrounding area by giving people options other than having to drive in, and then particularly where we've got commercial vehicles coming into the city centre, putting in place the clean air zone grants to give businesses options other than having polluting vehicles. We've done with the Highways England. We've done an electric vehicle loan scheme as well for small businesses. There are obviously commercial vehicles that we do need to be part of the economy in Leeds and get those as clean as possible. And we're one of the cities that are actually able to remove the ministerial direction to have a charging clean air zone as a consequence of all the work we've done both directly with the vehicle fleet and on projects to try and reduce overall amount of traffic in the city centre. I think it's also, again, looking at the area Army Gyratory is in, it's as a consequence of this work and also some wider regeneration schemes that aren't in the paper. The actual neighbourhood of New Wortley, which was our first priority neighbourhood in terms of intervention as a city council to deal with regeneration issues. There's a huge amount going on in the area, and this work by providing the much better pedestrian access, to the city centre. I used to work around there and trying to walk in that area with the railway lines and the highways as they are at the moment is really difficult. So, like I say, we're committed to a number of regeneration schemes, and this will make it much easier to walk across. And if anybody on the call's ever tried to catch a number 4 or a number 16 or a number 42 bus out to West Leeds at rush hour, when we get rush hour back, again, a lot of the traffic improvements will really help people in West Leeds by giving a more reliable bus service. I thought it was worth putting some of that wider context. I mean, clearly we're agreeing the spending on the scheme, and that's the focus of the papers, but just in terms of wider context around air quality, trying to just reduce traffic overall. It's not just about moving existing traffic from one place to another, trying to reduce traffic overall, give businesses and commercial traffic better access because there's less congestion, and like I say, some of the wider environmental and regeneration work that's happening in the area as well.
Thank you for that, and you're absolutely right. To try and dissuade people from coming into town in the first place is a really big priority. Just so that everybody knows I'm not going completely bonkers. On page 30 it says, in addition to reducing its carbon footprint through construction and use of materials, the scheme is exploring green features such as green wall for underpass, etc. So I suppose the language was a little bit vague there. So thanks for that clarification, James. And I do welcome that. I did enjoy our walk around, and I was really grateful to get an understanding of the scheme. And the park is going to be particularly welcome, I think, for residents, and also that footbridge access. So that's definitely something that can't fall away if budgets get tight, is that access from that community into the centre of town. Hopefully you'll definitely get on time and on budget for 2023, because that's going to be incredibly impressive. Okie doke. Mark, you wanted to comment?
Thank you, Matt. And that wider context from James was really helpful. I was just going to make 2 quick comments. The first was very much on the climate impact and committing to a project that increases the amount of carbon at this stage. I was wondering, like, how in these projects we could challenge ourselves to prioritise projects that could offset some of that, and at least sort of think about that in the round, so that we're not just, you know, increasing all the time. The second one was around the disruption that this might cause during the works itself, and how much thinking had been done, because that's obviously a very key route for businesses, and sort of how much sort of work and thinking had been done for the period where that work is going ahead, which is obviously very, very imminently.
And of course, Asda's slap bang in the middle of it, isn't it? So that the disruption could be quite substantial. Melanie?
Yeah, I mean, just on that there is a disruption plan that has been prepared. So yes, Leeds officers are aware that, you know, that there's implications here, and how do we make sure that the buses can still be routed and traffic will still be moving. So yeah, we are aware of that. And in terms of climate, we do look at the climate implications for each scheme. Hence why we've brought them out in the report, because we are looking at that. Now, we would look to make a contribution to net zero at a programme level, but we do recognise that by moving traffic out of the city centre, we're improving the air quality in the city centre. So we need to look at this in the round. There are wider benefits. And this is the issue with looking at individual elements as they come through, that when you look at the carbon, it doesn't seem to have a massive impact either way, whether that's positive or negative. But we do want to start looking at this consistently and adding up what does that look like collectively across the programme. So we are looking at that. We're working on it. It's early days, but we are looking at it, and we're working with the consultants on that as well.
If I could encourage the team, Melanie, to also think beyond our expectations of people shifting to electric vehicles, because that could be used at any scheme that involves roads, couldn't it? That could be our default setting. We need additionality beyond what we expect, because government have insisted that there's going to be a cut-off point where electric vehicles are going to have to be across the whole of the UK. So that can't just be our benchmark. We have to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
James?
Yeah, Melanie made the point I was going to make around, you know, there is a balance here around vehicle emissions in terms of the CO2 emissions increase as it's anticipated some journey lengths will be longer, not that there will be more traffic. However, that's balanced off against the fact that it will, Bishopgate Street, which people that don't know Leeds is the bit sort of the road between the station and the Scarborough Taps pub, is one of the most polluted in terms of particulate pollution. It's one of the most polluted roads in the country. So taking traffic out of there gives us particulate pollution benefits, even though it moves slightly in the other way around carbon, because people will have to make slightly longer journeys. Like I say, I mean, I hope over the next 10 years is, you know, I mean, we've already talked about bus franchising, and with a lot of the other public transport improvements we make, plus an overall improvement in emissions in the vehicle fleet will mitigate that. It's just, I wouldn't, you know, however much you put into a model, we need a robust model now, but I hope we can go, like I say, just in terms of giving people alternatives, we can go a lot further. It's just obviously that's very difficult to. Modelling has to have some robustness to it. It can be kind of like, you know, reading the tea leaves stuff. But like I say, a lot of the interventions we want to do will hopefully go further than we can predict at the moment.
Thank you very much, James. And just one thing, it isn't necessarily for this meeting, but just to raise, Melanie, the assurance pathway and approval route. The evaluation, which is going to be really important when we talk about our climate change targets, isn't it, of any project. So you get to the end and it's the evaluation level 7. The recommendation, the Combined Authorities Programme Appraisal Team, and the decision is the Combined Authorities Director of Delivery. But that Director of Delivery has also approved the financial closure and the delivery of the project. So I'm just concerned that we could end up with it open to criticism that we're marking our own homework. So I'm just wondering if there's something we could take away from this meeting to look at that in more detail. Maybe I've misinterpreted that, but if we could speak further about that out of this meeting, I'd welcome it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okie doke. Are we happy with the Armley gyratory? Lovely. Thank you. Moving on, Melanie.
Okay, so the final scheme for consideration today is Harrogate Road New Line. This is in Bradford, just in Bradford actually, adjacent to the Leeds boundary. And it's a critical junction leading to the airport and also the connectivity to Bradford city centre. So the scheme is in delivery, and we've already approved the scheme and what it was going to do. So it involves the widening of the existing highway on all four arms at the junction. There are traffic signal upgrades, junction improvements, and improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. Now, this will benefit all road users, including buses that are regularly going through that junction as well. This has come forward as a change request because basically there are a number of unforeseen costs that have come to light on this scheme. So basically there were a number of uncharted utilities that were found, and the project team had done all the usual checks in terms of site investigation while still trying to keep the junction open, and found a series of old culverts, pipes, wires, and it's basically added cost and time to the delivery of this project. So we had a discussion at an informal workshop session with place committee members, and we discussed this scheme, and they recommended that I bring this forward for your consideration today. So there is an increase on costs. The proposal is that the combined authority pays 1.14 million towards the additional costs, and that Bradford Council would then pick up 280,000 of additional costs to allow the scheme to continue. We have recognised that these are exceptional circumstances. We also agreed previously as investment committee and then later on as place committee that we would allow projects on a case-by-case basis to come forward if we felt there were exceptional circumstances, and this is one of those schemes. So hence we've brought it for consideration today.
How often does this happen, Melanie? Uncharted conduits or ducts or whatever, pipe work. I mean, Yorkshire Water should be really experienced at this stuff.
They map what they believe is there. And the thing is, we had infrastructure technology and we could identify there were pipes at the locations that were mapped, but actually there were multiple pipes, and it's taken much more effort to then remove them or to realign them. And it is happening more and more. And I guess as we're doing more and more difficult schemes where the highway might not have been uncovered for a number of years, we're finding more and more of this historic infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. And this is a good value for money project, isn't it?
It is. The BCR was represented as very high value for money. It still is at 9.38. So yes, in terms of a DFT evaluation, it would be considered to be very high value for money. It's a high volume junction. There's a lot of traffic and a lot of congestion, and the benefits will also be, increase in air quality because traffic will be stood for less time basically, and it will help the buses to flow better through that junction as well.
And last time we spoke about it, I wondered if there was a bus priority scheme. Is that the case?
There isn't a bus priority scheme, but it will benefit buses and the bus routes because there will be less time waiting at the junction. So the bus services should be more reliable, and it's getting people between Bradford city centre and the airport.
Okie doke. Thank you. Any comments on that? Susan, you're happy?
Yeah, it just needs to be completed as soon as possible. Obviously, there's been considerable disruption on that junction for some time, so it just needs to be finished as quickly as possible.
Right. Good. We're all happy to approve? Yep, good stuff. So I think that comes to the end of your contribution, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6, financial reporting. Angela, you want to take us through this? It doesn't sound like there's much drama at the moment.
No, thank you. Fortunately, no, not much drama on this item. We've been bringing you a regular reporting paper to each of these meetings. This month it's the revenue update. So there's some commentary in there, and the position, the last full reporting period is up to the end of October, so it's the position as at there. There's a number of timing differences, and the real variances that we know about are related to staffing and concessionary travel, which I think we've picked up through some of the budget discussions, and indeed the reforecast that is underway as part of the budget papers will reflect that. So I think this paper is probably almost slightly old news, but it is part of our good practice to bring you those monitoring reports. Having said that, if people do have any questions of detail, obviously happy to take them. But as you said, there's little drama in this one, and the key points are picked up later in the budget paper.
Thank you. Has anybody any comments they'd like to make? No? No, good, thank you. So moving on to item 7, which seems odd, doesn't it, in these times where we're all encouraged to work from home. But Angela, if you'd like to talk us through Wellington House.
It does indeed, doesn't it? But we thought this is part of the wider corporate remit of the committee. We thought it'd be sensible to bring you something, given the previous investment committee signed off the refurbishment of Wellington House, which is due to complete in December. So we thought it'd be helpful just to bring you a position on where we are now, particularly because of the current ways of working. Most of us are having to do these meetings from home rather than be able to be in an office. So just a confirmation in the first few paragraphs of the properties, the city centre, the head office properties that the Combined Authority operates. This doesn't look at the other properties we have, which are the operational ones, the bus stations. So many of you are probably aware that Wellington House is the main head office for the Combined Authority, has been for some time. It is owned by the Combined Authority, and the previous approvals were to refurbish it to a better standard to ensure it met current requirements for access and was suitable for a different organisation than the one that bought it probably some 30 some years ago now. That refurbishment work was due to complete in December. It's run over by a couple of weeks because of COVID. Subcontractors who were doing much of the final fit out were unavailable in the run up to Christmas. So we hope to have it complete in the next couple of weeks. We need to make sure it's thoroughly tested, snagged, etc. Current plan B from government is at the moment working from home till 26th of January. So we will be focusing on having the office ideally available from the end of January, at the point we're able to bring people back. That means that City Exchange office that we're currently using will be giving notice on that, and we'll be using Wellington House as the main base, using a combination of using the hybrid working that people have got used to and that people have welcomed. So that the office will provide meeting facilities, it will provide desk space, and we believe it will accommodate the numbers of people we have using the mix of working from home, from partners, and in Wellington House. The third property we've acquired in effect in the last year is Plowland House, which was leased by the former Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and transferred to us last May after the mayoral election. The premises there, again, the team are working from home as much as they can in line with government guidance. But they've been clear all along that the property is not one they'd want to continue with. So we have been supporting them in looking for alternative accommodation in Wakefield. We're hoping to bring that to a conclusion fairly soon. And that will then provide a new fit for purpose base for the police and crime team, but also provide some space for Combined Authority employees to use if they need to be out in that part of the region. That's probably it. And it just mentioned in there that obviously we've been going through a consultation on terms and conditions for Combined Authority employees, which will, and a plank of that is around the hybrid working that we've had to put in place because of COVID. But the feedback we've had from staff is that's been very much welcomed, and we're looking to incorporate that into a more permanent policies going forward, I think in common with many companies and local authorities. So the report here is just really for information and to confirm that we are close to getting the head office back, and hopefully we'll be able to resume normal business in there later this year.
Great. And green credentials are pretty good, aren't they, Angela?
Yes, I mean, we designed a number of things in. The solar array is on the roof. We've got, because we've been able to because we've stripped the building back, we've been able to build it back up in a much more efficient way. It's been tweaked and adapted and things added on, and this has been an opportunity to actually do it properly. So the lighting is energy efficient, the insulation's been improved, the comfort cooling is now works more efficiently. So we're hoping that should give us a much better carbon footprint, and we'll be measuring that as we move back into the building, be able to report back on it.
Thank you. And Matthew, if you could feed back to the council that we really want to get into a new building in Wakefield. So if there's anything you can do to chivvy those discussions, I would be so grateful, because I know Plowland House is not fit for purpose, and we could end up in a position where we've loads of members of staff, 70 members of staff with them nowhere to go. So I would appreciate that. Thanks.
We'll be on with it today, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan.
Yeah, just really pleased to see this finally come into fruition, and having a good office environment for staff who need that to perform well. So I'm really pleased to see this finally come to a conclusion, and obviously it'd be great to see you cutting a ribbon at some point, Mayor, for this building when we all manage to get back in there. So no, good news.
And my ambition is still not to just be focused in Leeds. And I did say that right at the beginning. And it's so frustrating that because of COVID, being able to move around the region as much as I'd want hasn't been really happening. So that's why Wakefield's important as well, that touchdown space to be able to have team meetings there. And the team space, the meeting space in Wellington House is excellent. So I think we hopefully everybody will be able to make use of it. So it's good news. We don't know what we're going to put over the door, like some sort of pub, somebody's name over the door. But no, looks like we finally got there. Thank you. So happy to move on to item 8, business planning and the budget. So for those who were in the previous meeting will know that we've been discussing that a little bit this morning. I wonder, Angela, do you want to talk us through it?
I will, thank you. There's not a huge amount new in this at this stage. I think what I've reported back is the decisions that were made at the Combined Authority meeting in December, just reflected again on some of the challenges that are feeding into the budget paper. I think the timing is such, we've got the next couple of weeks where we're trying to hammer out some of the final revisions and reviews of the budget, proposal for next year. Obviously, the plan is to get that has to go to the February 3rd meeting of Combined Authority. I think that the timing this is a little early for us to be able to share it with you in detail. And I think my proposal would be that we try to get together for a more detailed briefing on the budget in a couple of weeks when we've actually got to a proposal and a final sort of balanced position. We are working through some of the issues we talked about before on the staffing, how many of those are one-off savings because of temporary vacancies, and just making sure we've got a very robust base on which to go forward into 2022-23. Mentioned in here the reserves, and I think there was a question at the last Finance Resources Committee about the appropriate level of reserves. We have done a piece of work to compare across with the other local authorities. We're following that up directly with each of them, and they most of our partner authorities have a level of general reserves, and they also have a lot of earmarked specific reserves that cover off some of their risks. And we just wanted to make sure we understand that properly, and we'll bring that back to you for consideration ahead of our reserves going forward. But we are proposing it is going to be around 5%, and a little more probably on tendered services. We know there's some huge uncertainty and unknowns in the bus industry going forward, as we are still in COVID, as passenger numbers haven't recovered, and we know operators are potentially going to take some action. We've been through a lot of the unknowns before. They continue to be unknowns, that we're not getting to a point where these risks and issues have crystallised. So that there's so much uncertainty riven through the budget, which is why it's taken us a little longer this year to try to nail it down. We keep hoping that the next bid gets fixed, but we've got some decisions in place. The levy discussion has progressed. We've talked about reserving any savings that we make short term from bus services to help shield us against the impact next year of increased costs. And I said we'll work through further detail and come back to you with that later this month.
And certainly it's going to be challenging if the government don't support the bus industry going forward after March. Ben, you want to come in?
Well, only to add that the intention is to go out for a budget engagement process on the combined authorities draft budget alongside the more formalised consultation on the police and crime budget. So those things will appear in the public domain shortly. Angela, is that right?
That is correct. Yes, we're not required to do any formal consultation on our budget, but we've done it before. We think it's a good thing to remind people in West Yorkshire what combined authority is doing for them and where its money comes from and how it's being spent.
And obviously we will be able to schedule in time for leaders to look and scrutinise before that obviously goes out to the public.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. Okie doke. Everybody happy with the work that's underway? Great. It looks like I overran in the previous meeting and I've underrun in this. So maybe I'm back and level pegging. I think that's it for now. Just to remind everybody that our next meeting will be
A month, I think.
a month's time. Yeah, good stuff. Any further comments? Any AOB? All good?
Sorry, just one thing. Angela and I were just discussing, actually, the next meeting is due to be in a month. But we did wonder, actually, given the proximity of that to the next combined authority meeting, whether we actually need that meeting. So if members are okay, we'll give that a bit more thought and come back with some advice.
Well, certainly if we've had a chance to scrutinise the budget beforehand, that would be probably a good chance for us to say that work has been done over here. Do we need this meeting if we're all in agreement that the budget is going in the right direction? Okie doke. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.